From barren plains to majestic mountains, from lush forests to arid deserts, the diversity of landscapes and terrain on our planet is astounding. The art of crafting such stunning landscapes and terrain from nothing is a formidable challenge for any CG artist. Nature itself shapes the land through countless slow and complex processes that take millions and millions of years.
Okay, that is quite enough out of you, David. I'll take over. So this is a quad. It's nothing too complicated really, it's just two little triangles that form a little plane. But it's flat and boring, which is not very terrain-like. So let's add quite a bit of points to it by using a subdivision surface modifier. Once we subdivide it enough, we have enough detail here to actually start manipulating the mesh. Now is the fun part. Now we just slap a material that adapts to the terrain and we have something that looks like this. And that is quite impressive. It couldn't be more easier to do that procedurally. So let's dive right into Blender and I'll show you guys how it's done. So this is the file that you guys are going to receive. This is my first version of the auto terrain generator, and so originally this was supposed to be a whole tutorial where I show you guys how to make this from scratch, and I have recorded that exact tutorial like 7 times, but the problem is each time I try to make it for the tutorial, I discover a new method of doing the same thing. By the way, you can download this for free in the description, and there's also a link in the pinned comment, so go check it out. Yeah, so this is the file, and I've set up this little scene to show off the generator's capabilities. So this mesh, it just looks like this without the terrain modifier, and yeah, this is what I modeled, and the goal was to get it to look to something like this. So how did I manage that? So this is the geometry that goes into it, the one that looks like this. And to make it look like that, we need a lot more points. So I've added a subdivision surface modifier. For recording this tutorial, I've just turned it down to 3, but obviously the higher this value is, the more detail you're gonna get out of your mesh. So yeah, it's looking crisp right now. And you can like set that to whatever you want depending on your scene, but I'm just gonna turn it down to 3. Yeah, and before we do all the displacement stuff, by the way, this node group is not as complicated as a lot of you guys like to believe it is. It's actually pretty dang simple, and this version is the simplest iteration of it that I could, well, as of right now, that I could make. So yeah, I'm just gonna go through this. So before I'm doing all the displacement stuff, which we'll get into, I'm just saving some important data from this mesh. So for the first thing is the original area, which if we look at it really quickly, looks like this. So this is a gradient that goes from black to white. So black means it's a face with a small area, and the wider it gets, it means the larger the area is. So if you look at the wireframe, you can see that that is true. So the small faces gets grayer tint, and the larger faces are just fully white, and you can also see that here. And I'm just saving that, and we'll get to that later as to why I'm saving that. Similarly, I'm also saving the position. Position just means what the mesh looks like before the displacement, which is this state of the mesh. I'm saving that as OP, stored named attribute. By the way, I've also named and labeled everything in the file so that you guys can go ahead and tinker with it yourselves safely. Similarly, I'm also saving the pre-displacement normals. Normals are just the direction each face is facing. It's not. I'll show you guys why later. And next we get to the displacement, and displacement is actually pretty simple. So these are two normal nodes. By that I mean I've taken a normal, I've separated its XYZ components, and I've multiplied the factor from a noise texture. This is procedural noise, and I've multiplied it. Don't worry about this. I've multiplied it with each component, then recombined it and sent that vector data with noise inside it outside. So this will give us some noisy vectors, and I've that into a set position node. So if I mute this, there's no noise, and if I unmute it, so there's noise. So this is going to be the cliff noise. So as you can see, this has more strength than this one. If I increase this, you can see that the cliff sides are getting bigger. See? And if I increase this, you can see that the ground is affected, just the ground, right? And I'm blending between both of these by using the normal data, the one that I showed you guys earlier, separating the XYZ. So let me show you what that looks like. So this is just the X data, and this is the Y data. So any face that's not facing in the Y direction, it starts adding a gradient from black to white. What we need is the Z gradient. So if it's facing in the Z direction, it's white, and if it's not, it's just black, and anything between that will get like a nice smooth gradient. So I'm using that as a mask. So if I unplug this, so you'll start seeing that now it's just I think the ground displacement applied on everything. And if I stand the factor up, you can see that it's the cliff displacement applied on everything. So I'm just using this as a mask. So if you've used Photoshop or any editing applications like that, you'll start getting an idea of how it works. So this is just a mask, and that's driving the position, which gives us some displacement. So it's literally that simple. Now, if you guys want to make it a little bit more complicated, you can duplicate this and add more and more of this to like add more levels of detail. And I'm going to leave that up to you guys. So you guys can go ahead and make all kinds of different terrain if you want to. Now, the next part, this is the only, I'm going to say complicated, but it's not really complicated. It just looks complicated, but sort of hard to wrap your mind around part. So this is my humble attempt at having some sort of smart system to restore mesh detail. Let me show you guys what I mean by that. So let me turn up the detail a bit here. Yeah, so 4 should work for now. So this is what the mesh looks like, and obviously this area is supposed to be sort of like a ramp with a bit of stairs, right? And I'm going to disable the set position node here. So watch what happens. So once I do that, we lose all of that detail, the intricate detail modeling work that I did, which is ridiculously low poly, but that detail is gone, right? Because each face in the cliff side is being affected by these vectors, which is applying the strength. So we're applying strength of 20 units, and it's being applied unanimously in every direction, right? Regardless of what kind of mesh we have. But obviously we don't want that because we've modeled some steps. So I've added sort of a hacky way to avoid that by it's exactly the same as this blending solution here, but this time for the mask we're using, so there's 2 options for the mask. So the first one is this original face area mask. So what is this? So I've saved the original face area as OA here, and I'm just using that. So this is what that looks like. Yeah, so this is the face area that I showed you guys earlier, and I'm just clamping that. Then I'm blurring it so that I'll get a more smoother gradient, as you can see. So I'm just blurring that out. Then I'm just clamping the values again and reversing it by using a color ramp, and that is the mask that goes into our mix node, just like this one here. So why is there a switch node? So switch node lets us switch between two inputs. So the first method that I told you guys is this. So this is supposed to be the automatic solution, but that doesn't work nearly as well as you would expect it to. So if I turn this off, you can see that it's a bit smoothed out already. And why is that? Because I have made a vertex group. So this is just a vertex group. So the idea is that you go in and you go to weight paint mode and just paint the faces that you want to be excluded from the displacement, right? And you make a vertex group and name it something like detail. So I've named it detail here. Now, if I go back here and look at this, I'm just referencing that vertex group as a named attribute, and I'm just doing the same thing, and I'm plugging that in as our factor. So the position node, if you just plug it in as it is just the state of the mesh as it currently is. And I'm just blending that with the position that we saved earlier. That's literally it. And yeah, that's the restoring mesh detail part of it. I'm sure there's obviously better ways to do that. So if you know any alternative to doing that a bit more easier, I'm all ears. So let me know down in the comments or just tweet at me. And finally, it's just the material. So I'm just applying the material, which we'll get into, and then there's just scattering some grass assets on top of the cliff, the ground part, and it's just a simple scattering, just distributing some points, instancing on the points some grass, and you can select that from here. And I've just exposed a few values. Like scattering stuff using geometry nodes is so easy that there's at least like a handful of tutorials that does it better than I do. So I would not recommend you doing it my way, but this is sort of my solution to it. So I'm just giving that out also for free within the file. Now so that's 50% of the job done. Now let's go into our materials and see what ties it all together. And the material part is actually, it may look like a complicated mess, which it's not. It's just blending between a couple sets of different materials together. Let me show you what I mean by that. So this is the cliff material mix. So this whole section here and this whole section here is one material. So this is the rock material, and this is another rock kind of material. And I'm just blending between that to avoid the tiling by using just the noise texture. And I'm getting a combined material out. Remember that. And this is a grass material. And for this, it's just a single grass material. And I'm blending that by using this attribute. What is this attribute? So inside geometry nodes, there is the instancer, and in the instancer, I'm using a noise texture for controlling the density. So I'm plugging this in by clamping it, and like this is what I'm using for the density, so that there's like breaks inside the grass. Instead of the grass being all over the place, like there's like patches where there's no grass, right? And the noise that's being used to control that, I'm sending that out as an attribute called grass pattern. And we can use that in the shaders to blend between the grass. So if you look at this material here, you can see that everywhere there's grass going, there's also a little grass material underneath it to blend, to sort of marry the scattered grass and the material together, right? And yeah, it just looks a whole lot cleaner that way instead of just having dirt underneath. So that's the grass material, and beneath that, it's very similar to what I've done with the cliffs. It's just a ground material, which is blending between sort of like a mossy ground, which is this kind of gravel-like part, and this, what is this material? Yeah, this sort of like muddy kind of ground. Yeah, let me show you guys what I mean. So this is one material, right? So if I zoom out, you can start seeing that there is a very apparent tiling. So this is the mossy material, and then there's this, and this is the sort of what do you call it? Yeah, sort of like a muddy dirt kind of material, and I'm just blending between that by using this noise here. So the entire philosophy, if you can call it that, behind this tool is just blending between stuff using noise textures. That is basically it. That's what I meant by controlled randomness. You see the randomness in nature, and the computers can also do randomness, so you can just control it and are directed wisely. You get the chaos that you'll see in nature. So this is that. So this breaks up the tiling a whole lot and makes it also look natural. So that's a pro tip. Now, so there's that super material here, which is by mixing these two, and then there's the cliff material, which looks like, let's give it some time, which looks like this. So that's two materials being blended together. If you guys want to see that, this is one material, and now you guys can see what I meant by the tiling, right? So yeah, it's very obviously just one material duplicated over and over again, and the other one looks like this. So I've just mixed both of those by using this noise texture. So there's like one, and there's two noise textures to blend two different materials together. And finally, this large chunk and this large chunk is being mixed together here to form our final material, which is controlled by our original normals from all the way back in Geometry Nodes. So that's why I saved this here. So we have the original normals, and we're just using that yet again. This time also, I've like separated the Z. This time I've just added a little bit of noise to the blending part of it to break down, so that it just doesn't look very smooth, right? So nothing in nature is very smooth. Everything has little imperfections to it, and you have to try to recreate that as much as possible. So I'm using that as our final mask to blend between this mega material and this mega material to form our final auto landscape material. And this is important. So a lot of you guys asked how I was able to map this material to this procedurally generated mesh, and that is done by using triplanar mapping, basically. So instead of having a UV map that you manually make for your mesh, you just project the textures. Instead of it being flat, you set this to box, and you project the textures from every angle, and you hide the seams by using this blend node. And you just have to do that on every material, and this is the final thing. You also set it to object coordinates for it to work properly, and that will give you a pretty simple but really versatile auto landscape or a terrain material. And why do they say versatile? Because you can easily swap out the texture. So if you have another material downloaded, you can swap out. So instead of, if you want this to be sort of like a wet, mossy forest environment, you can download that material and just swap each texture. So if the material that you downloaded has a color map, just set that color map here, the normals here, the height maps here, and ideally you would have a roughness map too, but I'm missing that for some reason. But yeah, you get it, you get what I mean. You do that for all the materials. So instead of grass, if you just want it to be like just sandy, so if you want this to be like a beach, instead of having all of this, just have one material for sand, and that is pretty much basically it. So that leaves us, and I don't think there's much else to it. It's pretty simple. If you look at it, it just looks complicated because, you know, nature is complicated. It's just controlled chaos basically. So yeah, if you guys have any doubts, or if you guys like have any questions at all, just let me know down in the comments below, and I will be more than happy to help you guys out. And yeah, I absolutely encourage you guys to go in here and mess with all this stuff to come up with your own versions of it, because I know for a fact that this is not the best way to do it. This is my own way of doing it, and there's smart people out there who knows way better than I do, who actually knows what they're doing for once. And please do improve upon this and feed at me, like send me emails to show you like what you guys are making. I would love to see. And yeah, please do download this. And if you like the video, if you also want to see me make this from scratch, I already have the recording. If you want me to show you guys how to do that, I can upload that as a full tutorial if you want it. So let me know in the comment below. And if you guys want to see me do anything else, like I plan on doing a lot of more tutorials on this channel. So yeah, recommend me ideas for anything you guys want to see, and I'll be more than glad to make tutorials on it. So if you like the video, subscribe, hit the like button, and hit that little bell button so that you will be notified the next time I upload. So also download the BlenderKit add-on. It'll just make your whole life easier. Like, this wouldn't be possible. I mean, it would be possible, but it wouldn't be so easily accessible if it wasn't for the BlenderKit add-on. So yeah, I'll see you guys later. Have fun. Enjoy making some awesome looking terrain. See you later.